Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls. Welcome to Emergency Management Associates. We're coming to you from the Area Command, 392 miles west of Kitty Hawk Beach, North Carolina. I want to welcome everybody who's joined us today on the EMA show. I'm sorry we had an echo there. I fixed that. I want to welcome everybody here. I'm going to talk for just a few minutes about what we're going to talk about before we actually start the program. I want to make it very clear. What we're going to present to you tonight is important, vitally important for your safety, especially if those of you who are living in or having relatives living in the area of the Pacific Northwest. This is very concerning. Conditions have rapidly changed, and I'm going to talk about that in just a few minutes. Again, this program is going to be basically talking about the Pacific Northwest. I'm not going to talk about overall earthquakes around the world. Yes, we have some large earthquakes. Okay, I'm going to tell you that right now. There are some large earthquakes around the world, but there's nothing major. There are no major earthquakes in or around the world. Okay, if there was, we'd approach that first and then talk about the Pacific Northwest. But what we have to talk about is very, very important. Those of you that are here, we ask you that you share this program far and wide. Why? Because again, lives may be in danger. Lives may be in danger, guys. Everyone needs to see this program. Share with your friends, your family, your extended family, even your neighbors and close friends, okay? You need to share it with the people you work with and also with the people you associate with on social media. This word must go out, okay? I'm advising you, please, to share this widely in your sector friends. Share it widely. Everybody needs to know about tonight's program. Share this program widely. Also, please, folks, if you haven't already subscribed this program, please subscribe this program. We want you here. Not just wanting you here. It's not just for me. It's for everybody. We put out emergency safety information about all kinds of emergencies. We talk about weather. We talk about tornadoes. We talk about hurricanes. We talk about heat. We talk about thunderstorms. Everything involved with that, as well as winter storms as well. We also talk about earthquakes. We talk about volcanic eruptions. We talk about anything that might happen to you, including train derailments, just like happened in Palestine, Ohio, a couple of years ago. Major train derailment there. The people that handled it very poorly. And in fact, that community politicians and the state politicians in and around Ohio are going to face charges, criminal charges for what they've done. Okay? We talked about that before. We've talked about all kinds of explosions at oil refineries and everywhere else. We talk about everything, any kind of emergency that you can possibly imagine, we talk about on this program. Why? Because we want to get the word out about what is happening. We want to save lives. Tomorrow is Preparedness Friday. We're going to talk about emergency preparedness almost exclusively unless something major happens. Then we'll talk about that, and we'll talk about preparedness as well. But tonight, like I said, we're going to talk about the Pacific Northwest. Right off the bat, let me show you this. The tremor map. The tremor map. Notice up here in the Pacific Northwest, going on to Vancouver Island, almost the entire island of Vancouver Island is covered with tremors. Covered with tremors, north to south. Also look up into the Seattle-Tacoma area. Look at that. Quite a few tremors up there. Down in Seattle itself and the Puget Sound area, tremors. All over Oregon as well. Literally all over Oregon as well. But what they're not telling us is this, okay? They're not covering all the earthquakes. They're not showing you everything going on. They never will. Last month, they said there were over 7,000 tremors throughout the Pacific Northwest, including Vancouver Island, British Columbia. Now it's less than that. It's 3,360 tremors here. Now, why do you think that's changed? Again, I want to caution you. You can't believe everything the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network says or the United States Geological Survey. We've proven that. We've proven that. They can't be trusted. Notice over in Oregon extending even down into North California. Look where we have here. Tremors all up and down that area. From central Oregon all the way down to Mount Shasta. Covered in tremors. I'm going to explain most of that tonight. But I want you to know what's going on. I want you to know what's going on. Bella Virgo over in England says she found out Essex had a breathtaking earthquake in 1884. Not surprising. Not surprising at all. Belle, I appreciate that a lot. I want you to know that. Juanito's here. Juanito from El Centro, California is here. Juanito, we talked about earthquakes the other day in Los Angeles area and in Southern California. El Centro had over 33.0 earthquakes the other day. In one day. That happens every day in El Centro down in the Imperial Valley. 30 to 43.0 large earthquakes in El Centro alone. Over 500 earthquakes every day in the Imperial Valley of Southern California. 400 earthquakes plus a day in Los Angeles. Yet they say nothing's going on. They want everybody to believe the West Coast are impervious to earthquakes. They're not. I heard a report today about volcanoes. That reporter said nothing about the Pacific Northwest, nor did they talk about California as well. Nothing said. They talked about one volcano in Mexico. They did not even mention Costa Rica. They mentioned no volcanoes over in Chile or Argentina. None. Yet there are a bunch of earthquakes there and volcanoes as well. Ecuador, Sangay and Ventador volcano are erupting. They didn't talk about that. They talked about a handful of volcanoes around the world, and that's all. They did not even mention Indonesia. I find that appalling. I found that appalling. They mention in general the Ring of Fire. They talked about Alaska. Yet there are no volcanoes in Alaska yet erupting. I say yet. That can change any day now. But what I'm going to tell you now is you need to be very well aware of what's going on around you. Again, you need to be very aware of what's going on around you. The agencies are going to continue to lie to you. They have no truth in them. The agencies have no truth in them at all. Let me show you one such seismogram here. Okay? This is Grays Harbor, Washington. I want to show you what's going on here. Okay? Why am I being so specific? Because, folks, lives depend on it. USGS typically says nothing. We go into the seismograms and we see some activity, but we cannot even depend on the seismograms anymore because the agencies are deleting information. The agencies are deleting information and they scrubbed information off of Grays Harbor as well. However, Grays Harbor, they are showing an earthquake today. Okay? An earthquake happened after 9 a.m. this morning. After 9 a.m. this morning, approximately 9:06 this morning, there was a 2.8, 2.9 earthquake. You can see it here. Prior to that, we had some tremors building, and then all of a sudden, we had a 2.8, 2.9 earthquake. The other earthquakes here ranging in size from 1.3, 1.4 tremors on up to 2.8, 2.9. Okay? To the right of the 2.8, 2.9, we have a 2.5. Then we have some tremors, and then you see one single line, an earthquake. That earthquake was a 3.0 earthquake there. After that, we had another 2.4, 2.5. Then some tremors, and then another 2.6, 2.7. All in that same timeline after 9 a.m. this morning. Then it just shows tremors. Interesting. Very interesting. They again don't want to tell us what's going on. They just don't. Let me show you Loomy Island also in that same general area. Look at the earthquakes here. The earthquakes here are around 2.0 earthquakes, and then again some tremors here at Loomy Island. Okay? Yet this is not even covered by the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network or USGS. Again, they don't want to give us good information. They have no intention of it. Let's look at Orcas Island in that same area. Look at this. All kinds of earthquakes here. There are over 40 earthquakes here around Orcas Island. The largest being a 3.0 that happened just after 10:34 last night. 10:34 last night, a 3.0, maybe a 3.1 earthquake. You can see that here in the blue line here. Okay, about 10:34 last night. These other earthquakes range in size from tremors on up to 2.0s, 2.4s, 2.5s. That one here after, I'm going to say after, what shall I say? After 6:14 p.m. last night over on the far top right, that's a 2.7, 2.8. The others on this seismogram are limited, very limited. Range in size, like I said, from just tremors on up to 2.0, 2.2 earthquakes. You can see that. Okay, let's keep moving here. Why am I telling you about individual earthquakes in this area? Because again, they're not going to talk about it. They rarely do talk about it. Okay, let's look over at Washington State at the Tioga Law Enforcement Unit at the Washington Department of Fish and Wildlife. Look at this. Here we see harmonic tremors along the coastline of Washington. Harmonic tremors. That usually typifies what's going on. What do we know about harmonic tremors in Washington State? What do we know about harmonic tremors in Washington State? That usually means there's magma beneath the surface. Moving magma beneath the surface. I'm going to address that tonight. This shows a lot of magma moving beneath the surface. A lot of magma moving beneath the surface through magma channels coming off the Pacific Ocean. Okay? Magma moving off of the Pacific plate coming into Washington State, coming into Oregon, coming into California. I showed you California yesterday. We're continuing on. I want to make it very clear. People's lives hang in the balance here. I'm not saying it's not going to happen tomorrow. It could, but it could happen next week or sometime this year. I don't think it's going to happen. The major earthquake is not going to happen probably for the next 2 years. I'm talking about the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. I think we might have 2 years. Okay? But what I am talking about is a lot of earthquakes. And we're going to have some very strong earthquakes. We're also going to see volcanic eruptions. I'm going to talk about volcanoes tonight. I want to make it clear everybody needs to see this program. Okay? Everybody needs to see this program. Now, at the bottom of your screen, you are seeing methods you can post donations to our program. We have PayPal locations, 2 of them. We have a Venmo location you can post donations to our program. Also, beneath that, we have our addresses. We have our email address of rltnspdema at gmail.com. We also have our post office box. Okay? It is 504 Bethel Road, 504 Bethel, Bethel Road, Box 401. Morganton, Morganton, North Carolina. Zip code here is 28655. You can send us donations to our post box here. It's essential to keep this program on the air. We need your help. We need your help. We'd appreciate that. Also, you can send us the donations, like I said, through our PayPal or our Venmo locations here. God bless you for that. Now, folks, I want to show you what is exactly going on. We're going to talk about earthquakes. We're going to talk about volcanoes. We're going to talk about major movement. Major movement. I'm specifically, like I said, going to talk about what's going on in the Pacific Northwest. Okay? I want you to know people's lives hang in the balance here. Okay? Last week we talked about it and the week before, but things have changed. Some things have changed, and that's why we're here with you tonight. Okay? I want to make sure that you realize what exactly is happening. Okay? Now, I might ask the question here. How is it possible? The ocean is terrifying. How is it possible that the ocean is terrifying? What if the ground beneath your feet is not as solid as you thought it was? What if scientists have discovered something so vast, so unpredictable, and so dangerous right beneath Washington State and even Oregon and Northern California that they're now sounding the alarm as of April this year? Yes, scientists are now sounding the alarm as of April this year. The mood and atmosphere around the Pacific Northwest have changed since the end of last year, December 2025. Okay? A team of geophysicists made a discovery that could change everything that we know about the Pacific Northwest. What they found was not just another volcano. It was something deeper, larger, and even more alive. Let's explore this discovery beneath Washington, Oregon, and California. What is deeply concerning to me is that time may be running out. Time may be running out. Have I made that clear? What did I say? Time may be running out. This is deeply concerning, and you need to realize what's happening. I don't want to scare anybody. I want to put the knowledge in your bodies, in your minds. I want you to be thinking about what's going on. There is a mystery beneath the mountains. There is a mystery beneath the mountains. A mystery beneath the mountains of Washington, Oregon State. Those whole areas are draped in coniferous forests and crowned by the glaciated summits of the Cascade Mountains. What is known is the mountains are known for their natural beauty, but few realize the geological powder keg that's hidden beneath its landscape, stretching from Mount Baker at the north to Mount Adams in the south, Mount Hood in northern Oregon, down into the volcanoes around Newberry Crater, Bachelor Volcano, Citrus Volcano, down into Crater Lake in south central Oregon, and down into Mount Shasta and Mount Lassen in northern California. What's going on? What do you think is going on? The Cascade Arc, ARC, is defining Washington's volcanic backbone. The Cascade Mountain Range, going from southern British Columbia all the way down to northern California. The Cascade Arc defines Washington's volcanic backbone. Beneath these peaks, lies a complex and poorly understood network of magma bodies, magma reservoirs inside the subduction zone area. As I talked about before, the Cascadia area is a subduction zone, a huge subduction zone ranging from Queen Charlotte Island, Haida Gwaii, in British Columbia, Canada, all the way down to Mexico. A huge subduction zone area. Subduction zones is where the plates, one plate subducts under the other, just like this. In this case, the Juan de Fuca plate and the Pacific plate are subducting just like this, taking a deep dive under the North American plate on the Pacific West Coast, just like this. The Pacific plate and the Juan de Fuca plate are taking a deep dive underneath the North American plate. Okay? I hope everybody understands what I'm saying. I want to make it very clear. And you can stop me and ask questions anytime. Okay? Bella Virgo says venting, yes. There is volcanic venting. The volcanoes are venting, they're steaming. Tonight I'm going to show you pictures of the volcanoes, some of them today. Some of these pictures I picked up from today. They are venting, they're steaming. Magma is down beneath the surface, down beneath the summit of the volcano, and magma is pounding at the volcanic rock plug of the volcanoes. Magma is coming up from underneath in the magma chamber, pounding on that volcanic rock, that plug of the volcano. Okay? Underneath the plug lies a deep and poorly understood network of magma bodies, magma reservoirs in the subduction zone. The subduction zone, guys, that same area where the tectonic plate is subducting underneath the North American plate. The magma body, the reservoir. You cannot have subduction and not have volcanoes, and you can't have volcanoes without a subduction zone. That's why we have the Ring of Fire. Volcanoes all over subduction zones. Okay? And then we have fault lines. Fault lines in early 2025, they've seen records now, satellite records showing the fault lines beneath this iconic Cascade terrain underneath the mountains. Now, the Earth sent out a new signal. The Earth sent out a new signal. It did not begin with a bang, however. It began with a whisper, a low honking vibration, felt only by the most sensitive instruments buried in the mountain range. Buried in the mountain range. Guys, I'm serious about this. I wouldn't be talking about it again if I wasn't serious about it. Okay? A low honking vibration. We talked about it about 2 weeks ago. That vibration is a hydraulic magma channel. Magma pulsing through the magma channel. Magma pulsing through that magma channel. Okay? Creating a haunting vibration. Like hydraulic fluid. Like hydraulic fluid. Captain Ned has described it to me because he used to live there and he used to fish and camp along Echo Lake and other places around Mount Rainier. He felt the magma pulsing through the ground, hydraulic vibrations. Okay? Now scientists are saying that's exactly what is happening. Hydraulic vibrations. They're saying it's only felt by the most sensitive instruments, but if you are laying on the ground itself, you're going to feel the pulsing motions. You will feel these pulsing motions, okay? All throughout the Cascade Mountain Range. Every volcano is experiencing this. Every one of them. Now, these are not sharp jolts around the tectonic quakes, nor were they the icy creaks of glacial shearing. It has nothing to do with the glaciers. It has nothing to do with ice movement on the volcano itself. These tremors pulsed. They hummed. They moved originating from depths of 30 to 45 kilometers deep below the surface. They traveled deliberately, shifting from the vicinity of Mount St. Helens, past Mount Rainier, arcing toward the Seattle Fault Zone. The Seattle Fault Zone. Does everybody understand where that is? Does everybody understand where the Seattle Fault Zone is? Let's take a look at it. I want you to know what's going on. I'm going to take my time and walk you through this. I need you to understand what's happening and why. I want you to understand what is happening and why. Let's look at the Seattle area here, right here. Most of this area was covered by lava at one point in time after Mount Rainier last erupted. Everybody living in this area is having their homes, their apartment buildings, their workplaces built on a lava bed. Underneath this lava bed, there are magma chambers, magma reservoirs, okay, all throughout this area. It's happening. Magma is moving underneath these areas. There are fault zones, as you know. We've talked about these fault zones before. Okay? Literally all over King County. Literally all over King County. Why is this important? Because, folks, your lives depend on it. Your lives and other people in the area depend on it. And I know I've said that time and time again, but I want you to understand what is going on. I don't take this lightly. I do not take this lightly at all. As I said, I want everybody to understand what is happening. Okay? It's important. Now, I'm going to talk about the volcanoes. I'm going to talk about the magma chambers. I'm going to talk about the magma movement and what you can expect to see. Please, folks, please pay close attention to what we're talking about. I think it's important. If I didn't think it was important, I would have hung up this show and not even done it. But the evidence is coming out slowly but surely. More and more evidence is pouring out of the scientists almost every day. Almost every day. As I said, these tremors that are being felt, picked up by instruments all over the mountain range, are originating from depths of 30 to 45 kilometers deep, about 20 miles deep below the surface. They traveled from Mount St. Helens, Mount Rainier, around the Seattle Fault, and also up towards Mount Baker, all the way down to Mount Hood, down to Bachelor, down to Newberry Volcano, Sisters Volcano, and all the way down into Northern California. Initially, scientists theorized the groundwater movement or deep tectonic creep. Deep tectonic creep. Okay? We talked about those tremors at the beginning of this program. That's just part of the tectonic creep. Okay? But these patterns, these pulses, have been too patterned or even too synchronized. They formed a migrating wave. These pulses formed a migrating wave, what some experts now compare to a pressure front, a hydraulic pressure front within a massive magmatic system. magma channels. But soon after they found this out, more signs emerged. Magnetic arrays detected a sharp rise in the subsurface conductivity, an indication of superheated, partially molten rock. Superheated, partially molten rock. Imagine that. GPS sensors installed across the Cascade Mountain Range, again from southern British Columbia, Canada, all the way down to Mount Shasta and Lassen in Northern California. These GPS sensors are sensing movement. Micro F uplift is picking up. Micro uplift, not just micro uplift, but uplift in the volcanic system. Uplift in the magmatic system of the volcano. The volcanoes are rising, indicating the possible movement of, not even possible, but movement within the magma chamber of the volcanoes. What's going on? The volcanoes are appearing to be ready for an eruption. The rise up of the volcanoes. Okay, uplift. Magma is pouring into the volcanoes, causing uplift of the mountain itself. Okay? The mountain's being pushed upward. And several borehole temperatures anomalies were recorded up to 15 degrees centigrade, hotter than expected, with localized spikes in radon gas, carbon dioxide gas, sulfur dioxide, and even mantle-derived helium-3, a gas from the mantle of the Earth. We talked about this several weeks ago. Okay? Now, this isn't just a typical tectonic event. It's deeper. It's deeper, more powerful, and far more mysterious than geologists now believe. They've discovered edges of a vast awakening magma corridor. I'm going to repeat that. They have discovered edges of a vast awakening magma corridor, molten magma beneath the surface, one that stretches from Washington's volcanic spine, the Cascade Mountain Range in Washington, and it pushes deeply close and disturbingly close to densely populated urban zones. Densely populated urban zones. West and east of the volcanoes. West and east of the volcanoes. Okay? What lies beneath the peaks and valleys of Washington and Oregon, and even the Sleeping Faults? It could be molten magma sitting right beneath our feet. And what is whispering now could one day erupt into a huge roar. What is whispering now in the mountains on the seismographic instruments could one day erupt into a roar, a lava roar rushing down the volcano into valleys and urban areas. The three-dimensional images that have changed everything were supposed to be a routine imaging operation. Just another layer added to the geological map of the Pacific Northwest. But what researchers have found from the USGS, Caltech, and the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network, they uncovered this information in the beginning of this year, 2025, and it was anything but routine. Using advanced seismic tomography, satellite radar operations penetrating into the ground, underground radar potential. Okay? All that essentially provided a CAT scan of the Earth's interior in the Cascade Mountain Range. Scientists have since constructed a high-resolution three-dimensional model of the crustal areas beneath Washington and Oregon and California. feeding data from over 400 seismic stations and integrating search and rescue INSAR satellite information as well. A technique that combines multiple radar images of an area on the Earth's surface to measure degrees in elevation across the area. Satellite deformation readings. Magma pushing the volcanoes higher. The teams that processed this over months and months of subsurface echoes to reveal something more unprecedented. A massive semi-molten magma chamber, vast beyond anything previously detected. It stretches from the base of Mount St. Helens in the south through the colossal plumbing beneath Mount Rainier, extending deep into the crust under eastern Seattle. This was not a series of disconnected magma pockets. I'm going to repeat that. This was not a series of disconnected magma pockets. This was a corridor, a single unbroken reservoir of partially molten rock, hot, pressurized, and rising. The thermal gradients shocked even the most seasoned geophysicists. Some sectors showed crustal temperatures increases up to 40 degrees centigrade in less than 6 months. 40 degrees centigrade in less than 6 months. Melt percentages reaching over 20% in certain areas, placing the material dangerously close to eruptible. Dangerously close to eruptible. Thresholds of the upper dome of the chamber in the volcanoes is now just 10 kilometers, 6 miles beneath the surface. In some zones, a depth geologically considered shallow. But it wasn't just the size, it was what it means. Ground uplift, previously dismissed as seasonal variation, now aligned perfectly with the bulging edges of the magma corridors. The bulging edges of the magma corridors. You've seen pictures of Mount St. Helens bulging, just like it did before it erupted last time in 1980. Mount Rainier is also experiencing the same thing on the north flank of the volcano. Mount Hood is bulging in different areas. Mount St. Helens is bulging in different areas, just like it did before the eruption in 80. Mount Hood, Bachelor Volcano, Sisters Volcano, Crater Lake, Mount Shasta, and Mount Lassen are also bulging. Okay? Gas emissions from surface vents, particularly carbon dioxide and sulfur dioxide, and also that helium-3 coming from the mantle, were now understood as warnings, not anomalies. The gas emissions are warnings, not anomalies. Then there were the fractures, the rock fractures. The model revealed spiderweb-like weaknesses all around the volcanoes, especially around the base of the volcanoes. In the surrounding rock zones where seismic pressure has already caused microcracks to open up, forming escape routes for the gas, potentially from the magma itself. Was this corridor created recently, or has it always existed, dormant and undetected beneath our feet? If awakened, it could erupt in one place or in many different places. We've seen these vents before on satellite photographs around the volcanoes. Different crater vents spotted all around the volcano, just like we have in Italy around Mount Vesuvius. Almost spontaneously, one geologist who received the imaging report whispered the question that everyone feared. What if this isn't a volcano? What if it's a system in and of itself? What if this system has started to stir? Signs of pressure building up is incredible. The first signs of pressure buildup. The true warning didn't come from beneath the volcano. It came from the sky in March 2025, this year. Satellites orbiting 500 miles above the Pacific Northwest have detected something alarming. Surface uplift around Mount Rainier. Surface uplift around Mount Rainier has been accelerating. At first, scientists believed it might be a seasonal shift from the snowmelt or the groundwater expansion, but now they know different. Right Stuff says we call it ISAR. I agree. They call it ISAR in the Navy and also, I believe, the Army as well. Okay? But as I said, scientists first believed it might be seasonal due to snowmelt or even groundwater expansion. But then came the carbon dioxide, the sulfur dioxide, the hydrogen sulfide, and the unmistakable fingerprints of magma degassing near the summit of Mount Rainier and all the rest of the volcanoes. Sensors began reporting anomalous high concentrations of these volcanic gases. Not once, not occasionally, but daily. Daily degassing. Each spike is a whisper of Earth's hidden engine, signaling that magma is moving, not just under Mount Rainier, but stations installed around the Nisqually area, South Whidbey Island Fault. Yes, the faults have magma beneath them. And around the faults, we can detect gas emissions. Systems began to pick up something else, though. Low frequency harmonic tremors. Low frequency harmonic tremors. Interesting. We've talked about these tremors before. These aren't random shakes. They're eerie drum-like vibrations associated with rising magma pushing through the rock, fracturing the rock, warping the rock, seeking release. As the tremors intensified, we had more gases, or degassing. Did the heat borehole arrays near Carbon River on the northwest side of Mount Rainier? They showed ambient temperature increases nearly 8 Celsius, 46.4 degrees Fahrenheit. Okay, increases in temperatures over historical baselines. That's what we saw happening 4 years ago when we reported first to you of ice melt and snow coming down the flank of Mount Rainier. We showed you the video as we saw it, causing lahar at Mount Rainier National Park that USGS denied. And later, after they saw a report, they had to admit that it happened. And like I said before, they have now installed lahar sirens around Mount Rainier. Groundwater samples collected around the western slopes tested positive for elevated radon gas, a known precursor to seismic activity linked to pressure changes in the crust. Fascinating, huh? It doesn't stop there. It does not stop there. It moves on. What do you think is happening? What do you think is happening? Soon, even more data began to be revealed. Time-lapse satellite imagery showed there was ground uplift, but it was not localized. The uplift extended in a radial pattern, forming a shallow dome-like swell under Mount Rainier's base, a dome-like swell underneath Mount Rainier's base, a magma reservoir. Interesting. The scale of deformation suggested the presence of that growing pressurized reservoir, not a temporary fluctuation either. Isotope analysis of the gases revealed further insights. The helium ratios usually contained a high 3 to 4 ratio of helium signature, indicating the gases were sourced from deep in the Earth's mantle plumes rather than shallow crustal rock. That's the same fingerprint the geologists found before the 1991 Filipino Mount Pinatubo volcano eruption. The same fingerprint. Radon gas and helium gas. Using numerical modeling, researchers calculated that the stress accumulation beneath Mount Rainier has reached a critical point. The cap rock, the volcanic plug at Mount Rainier, the deep crust layer keeping the magma inside the volcano. Above the magma body, holding the magma inside the volcano, is showing signs of fracturing. That's why we've seen Mount Rainier steaming. We've reported this to you before. Mount Rainier is steaming, guys. Look at this. This is typical of what we've seen. We've shown you pictures of this before. Okay? The fraction of the plug of the volcano is causing the magma gases to escape. There is 67% of water inside the magma. That is why we see venting here. Water vapor escaping from the volcano, carrying SO2, CO2, radon, and even helium-3 gas. If the pressure breaches the plug, the cap of the volcano, a sudden explosive eruption could follow. We've talked about that. How's that possible? When that plug is hammered on too many times or by so much force, it already has fractures in it, which is allowing the gases and the water vapor to escape the volcano. Those fractures in that rock can only stand so much. And at some point in time, between the heat of the water vapor escaping the volcano, causing that plug fragments to enlarge, the fractures to enlarge. At some point in time, those fractures are going to pop. They can only withstand so much pressure. They can only withstand so much water vapor heated, and water vapor heated expands the rock, doesn't it? It's a simple physics experiment we talked about before. If that plug cap rock pops, there will be an explosive eruption that can follow, especially if the hydrothermal systems above it flash to steam. The hydrothermal systems above it flash to steam. The glacial rocks on top of the volcano. Geologists have begun to see the thermal pattern, the updrafts. Thermal updrafts have accelerated, and degassing harmonic tremors, surface deformations, high mantle gas signatures, cap rock destabilization. The magma plug, sorry, not magma, but the volcanic plug, the lava plug is destabilizing. All of it pointing to one terrifying conclusion. The magma beneath Washington wasn't just shifting. It was rising, expanding, and preparing for an eruption. One volcanologist reviewing a composite graph of gas emissions and tremor intervals said it plainly. It's like listening to a sleeping giant that's beginning to hyperventilate. Could it erupt tomorrow? Maybe not. But make no mistake about it. The system itself is waking up. And we've been already hearing it breathe, seen it breathe. Captain Ned was right all along. Captain Ned has been talking to me for years. What he's been saying is right, even though YouTube and other entities said he was wrong. He no longer has a YouTube channel because YouTube took him down. But everything he said was correct. What is the connection to Seattle? What is the connection to Seattle? The connection to Seattle, when most people think of volcanic danger, they picture remote smoky peaks, far from cities, majestic distance, and even silent, but in 2025. Scientists have revealed something that turned that assumption upside down. The magma system beneath Washington may be reaching into the hearts of the state's most populated urban areas, the urban corridor. Again, recent seismic tomography compiled from the data by the PNSN, the Pacific Northwest Seismic Network, the U.S. Geological Survey, and Caltech. They have mapped a westward extension of the partially molten corridor under Mount Rainier. Note what I said. They have mapped a westward expansion of the partially molten corridor, the magma subterranean body, the magma reservoir underneath Mount Rainier. A westward expansion. The corridor appears to stretch beneath Kent Valley, eastern Tacoma, as far north as Issaquah and Bellevue. In some regions, particularly east of Tacoma, the top of the magma body lies a mere 8 to 10 kilometers beneath the surface, less than 6 miles deep beneath the surface. This is dangerously shallow by geological standards. That's comparable to pre-eruption magma depths at Mount Pinatubo in the Philippines, and even Soufriere Hills in Montserrat. We talked about this before. Guys, it's deep, but it's still shallow. Damon Catman says that magma plume comes from deep within the South Pacific under Fiji. It's actually east of Fiji as well, out in the lower southern Pacific Ocean, under the plate. Now, this proximity that we're talking about is especially alarming given the hydrology profile of the Puget Sound region. I said hydrology profile. Again, I'm referring to the magma pulse signals, the magma pulsing signals, the hydraulic pulsing signals that were talked about, and also sensed by the system imagery from instruments on the surface. Okay? Hydrological profile. Deep aquifers crisscross the corridor. Many of those aquifers supply drinking water. They feed major rivers like the Green and White Rivers. According to the modeling by the University of Washington's Department of Earth and Space Sciences, if magma breaches into one of these aquifers, it could cause a phreatic eruption, an explosive interaction between magma groundwater and magma beneath that. These steam-driven blasts occur with minimal warning. They don't need a massive magma volume to devastate local infrastructure. Instead of rapid flashing of groundwater into high-pressure steam, it can cause rock fragmentation, ground failure, and crater-forming eruptions. Traditional volcanic monitoring tools like surface gas emission sensors, shallow seismic arrays are often ineffective in blind zones, like these urban development corridors that muffle the seismic signals. Yes, urban development corridors muffle the seismic signals. Deep gas channels are blocked by impermeable rock. Deep gas channels. Again, we're talking about volcanic gases. SO2, CO2, helium-3, and radon. Deep gas channels are blocked by impermeable rock and electromagnetic interference from city infrastructure. Okay? Now, Charlene Mayo is here in the chat saying the last earthquake in the Pacific Northwest, 1700s Indian folklore, 700 miles of plate in Northern California, massive land shift. Yes, there's a massive land shift. Whenever you get an earthquake like that, there will be massive land shift. But we're not just talking about the Cascadia megathrust earthquake. We're talking about a magma plume underneath the surface that can erupt. Okay? These signals that they have put, these seismic sensors that they put out throughout the area, they're being blocked by the infrastructure of the area. Okay? But there are still clues emerging. The INSAR satellite data has revealed slow ground uplift east of Tacoma. East of Tacoma, guys, less than 5 millimeters per year. Regionally, consistent drone-mounted infrared sensors flown by the USGS have detected an anomalous warm zone near and south of Lake Tapps. Near and south at Lake Tapps. Elevated SO2 emissions were recently recorded at Mud Mountain Dam, where no volcanic activity was previously believed to exist. But now they found elevated SO2 sulfur dioxide emissions. So what would an eruption look like beneath this corridor? In one worst case scenario modeled by the Cascadia Geohazard Initiative that we started way back in about 2005 when we first did a disaster drill in the Pacific Northwest. Our disaster drill was located in Spokane at the time. But that's when this worst case scenario was first modeled. The Cascadia Geohazard Initiative, a rapid phreatic eruption near Auburn. That would trigger a slope collapse into the Green River. A lahar flood 25 meters, 75 feet downstream, reaching Kent and parts of Renton in under 90 minutes. A lahar flood 25 meters, 75 feet downstream, reaching Kent and parts of Renton in under 90 minutes. Simultaneously, ash fall from a hydrothermal explosion would slow down T-TAC Airport, completely shutting it down. And the ash eruption would blanket Interstate 5. Public safety officials estimate over 120,000 people would be affected within hours. Over 120,000 people would be affected within hours. The most chilling part of this scenario doesn't even require a super eruption. It only requires one point of failure, an increasingly unstable system. One point of failure in an increasingly unstable system. The Seattle, Bellevue, and Tacoma cities may not sit beside the volcano, but according to the latest maps, they now sit at the top of it. They sit at the top of the volcano. The question the scientists are quietly asking is no longer if, but when. The next question, is this part of something bigger? Is this part of something bigger? What if Washington's rising magma corridor isn't the exception, but just the beginning of something far more extensive and even far more dangerous? New studies were released in April this year. We first talked about these weeks ago. These have revealed compelling geophysical links between Washington's deep magmatic structure and neighboring volcanic provinces. Crossbar tomography data shows a continuum of elevated heat flow and low seismic velocity zones, extending southward into Oregon's Three Sisters complex. Fascinating, huh? Fascinating. Now we have magma going from Mount Rainier down to Sisters Volcano. Sisters Volcanic Complex, 3 different volcanoes, all tied together with all the other volcanoes. Okay? Southward into Oregon's Three Sisters complex, and even down to Mount Shasta complex as well, into Mount Lassen. Fascinating, huh? We have just barely begun to crack this open. More and more data is coming in almost every day. Aubrey's saying there's about 500,000 people in that valley. Aubrey, you're right. You're absolutely right. In other words, what lies beneath Mount Rainier may be connected directly or indirectly to a broader corridor of molten material spanning 3 states. Molten magma spanning 3 states, and even possibly more than that. Researchers at the University of Oregon have identified synchronous surface deformation. Synchronous surface deformation events in both Washington and Oregon during one 3-week period in late 2024. Satellite data showed a subtle but measurable uplift occurring simultaneously near Mount Rainier, Crater Lake, and Three Sisters. Mount Rainier, Crater Lake, and Three Sisters. No joke. Now, some might think this might be a coincidence, perhaps. But the chemical signatures tell a different story. Gas samples from various surface vents in both Washington and Oregon now show similar helium-3 and even helium-4 isotope ratios, indicative of deep mantle-derived gases. Deep mantle-derived gases. These rare ratios are normally unique to individual systems. Finding these duplicated across multiple sites suggests a shared source, or at the very least, a connected reservoir. And doesn't stop at Oregon either. The same anomalies, elevated microseismic swarms, and even increased SO2 emissions have been observed at Mount Shasta and Mount Lassen in Northern California. Now, USGS and Caltech have not issued an official statement. But while no official statement has confirmed a direct underground connection, these patterns of gas emissions are troubling. The question is, could the Pacific Northwest be sitting at the top of a mega network, a mega network of volcanic activity? Could the Pacific Northwest be sitting at the top of a magma network of volcanic activity? A linear threat buried beneath ancient forests, fault lines, and even modern cities. A threat deeply beneath ancient forests, fault lines, and even modern cities. It's happening. Some geologists fear this is the early ignition phase. A slow cascade of pressure buildups that once unleashed could trigger a sequential eruption or widespread magmatic surges. Widespread magmatic surges. This is not science fiction. This is not science fiction. In the very least, it has become a hypothesis that even the most cautious experts are no longer ignoring. The experts are no longer ignoring the risk to millions of people. The risk to more than 7 million people live in the potential impact zone of Washington's growing magma corridor. And that number is conservative. 7 million people is a number very conservative. Probably many millions more. From Olympia to Seattle, from Tacoma to Everett, the entire metropolitan area risk on top of the ground that is showing signs of unrest. The ground is showing signs of unrest. But here's the catch. Most emergency preparedness plans have been built around individual eruption sites. Yeah. Preparedness plans that have been put together by scientists and the authorities in those areas have been built around individual eruption sites, not taking into account the extended urban population. Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, or Glacier Peak, not a multi-point system scenario. And yet, that's exactly what geologists are now worrying about. Mount Rainier, Mount St. Helens, and Glacier Peak. Critical infrastructure, hospitals, airports, energy grids, and communication lines. They all sit within the projected ashfall and lahar zones. What happens when we have high humidity or even rain and we have an ashfall? That ash turns into concrete. Our power grid lines that run above ground are going to fall with that heavy ashfall, turning into a concrete-like substance. Trish Killian, thank you for being here. We appreciate all of you here. Trish Killian says, find a good channel that will teach you space weather. There are several. You're going to need that foundation as we continue to pick up speed. That's true as well. But it's not just about space weather tonight. I'm talking about events that are happening on the ground here. Yes, space weather is going to figure into it as well. But I want to point out what's going on the ground. We have millions of people who are going to be affected here. This is a multi-point system-wide scenario. And the geologists are now worrying about it. When we have ashfall and water, rain, turning that ashfall into concrete, and we have ash coming down the rivers, lahar zones, with rock, trees, limbs, and other ash in the water, forming a lahar, running down the slopes at terrific speeds. Even if a moderate eruption were to occur near Mount Rainier, its satellite faults, the power plants could be knocked offline, expected to be knocked offline. Yes, folks, it's going to happen. Ashfall can clog water treatment systems and even overwhelm emergency services. Highways like I-5 and I-90 in the area could be buried beneath volcanic debris or even swept away by the lahars. Think about it. Highway I-5 and 90 swept away by the lahars. Bridges being knocked down. Some of those bridges are very old. It would not take much to have one of those lahars carrying big, huge trees, lodgepole pines, smack into a bridge abutment in the water, totally taking out the bridge. Massive walls of superheated mud and rock, moving faster than a car on the freeway. In some simulations, emergency response times will drop to near zero for cities like Puyallup or Auburn. But the most terrifying scenario that I can find is not just one eruption, but multiple eruptions. Multiple eruptions, guys. If this corridor destabilizes in multiple zones at the same time, driven by a rising pressure and interconnected faults, the Pacific Northwest could face a cascade of eruptions, each eruption triggering or amplifying the next. Skies will darken for days. Flights will be canceled and grounded. Rainwater would become acidic. As the ash spread, so does the chaos. Interrupting food supplies. Trucks and cars would not be able to deliver food or supplies to stores or markets. Overwhelming people at hospitals. Shutting down the ports of Seattle and Tacoma, two of the busiest trade hubs on the West Coast. Now, guys, this isn't just a geological event. It is a civil emergency waiting to happen. As I said before, I was part of one of the first earthquake drills in 2005, and again in 2014. And in the last 3 years, we had another drill called Cascadia Rising. I know for a fact what is about to happen in this region. Right now, no one can say how much time we have left. What are the scientists doing? Hello, Minority Reporter. We appreciate you being here. Grace for Purposes says, thank you for speaking the reality of what happens. That's why we're here. That's why Emergency Management Associates exists. We speak the truth. We talk about disasters and scenarios like it's going to be real. It is. This is real. The scientists have verified it. The authorities in the region have also verified it. I've been in contact with the Spokane Police Department. I've been in contact with the Seattle Tacoma Police Departments and other areas, and the sheriff's offices as well. What are the scientists doing now? Scientists across Washington State and Oregon are no longer studying a distant geological curiosity. They are monitoring a rising threat level. The USGS, in collaboration with several major universities and the International Seismic Systems and Networks, have declared a heightened observational phase. A few years ago, scientists deployed 55 seismographs along the Oregon coast. We've talked about this before. In the past few weeks, they deployed over 80 new seismographs across the Cascadia corridor. Some buried deep into the hardened volcanic rock. Other seismographs mounted on fault fractured ridge lines. These instruments are sensitive enough to detect quakes smaller than even a 0.1 microquake. The faintest footfalls of rising magma, microquakes. Meanwhile, drones equipped with 2050 hyperspectral cameras sweep the skies above Mount Rainier and Mount St. Helens as far north as Glacier Peak and even Mount Baker. They're mapping thermal anomalies within pinpoint precision. Those anomalies are revealing strange heat signatures. They're revealing strange heat signatures in zones previously thought to be geologically inactive. Thermal anomalies are now active. Orbiting satellites from NASA's Earth Observatory and European Science uh, area. Their Sentinel program is now focusing twice daily on the Pacific Northwest, monitoring deformation and within micrometers with radar interferometry. Okay? They're monitoring this area very heavily. Now, when paired with other instruments and satellite systems, they are monitoring swelled patterns of GPS data that's helping to build a real-time model of magma movement beneath the surface, below ground. Monatomic stations are humming, listening for electromagnetic shifts that signal the movement of fluids through conductive rock. Several of these stations already report low resistance zones, forming unexpectedly beneath fault zones, known fault zones, and the gas rising from the magma beneath. Radon, sulfur dioxide, carbon dioxide, and traces of helium-3 continue to seep from monitoring wells and summit vents. The ratios combined with the temperature shifts and the isotopic profiles are being fed into machine learning models. They're trained to predict magmatic ascent, movement upwards of magma in the volcanoes. And not just the volcanoes, but beneath the ground we're walking on. Yes, guys, magma movement upwards in even the ground that we walk on. This is not just research anymore. It's a reconnaissance because upward tremors are happening now. Degassing and thermal anomalies are no longer theoretical markers. They're converging. They're converging. There may be no eruptive warning, but the system is escalating. As one geologist from the Cascadia Research Collective stated, we're not just watching the volcanoes anymore. We're watching a system preparing to act. We are watching a system preparing to act. Fact. That's why we are here today talking about it again. The earth doesn't always scream before it moves sometimes. It murmurs deep and low, beneath Washington, Oregon, and even California. Something's murmuring right now. We're talking about, aren't we? And scientists are listening closely because they know what might come next. They know exactly what might come next. And guys, I believe it. I've been watching the science come in. That's why we're talking about tonight. I want to make sure everybody is realizing what's going on. The right stuff says, when this goes up, I don't know how we'll be able to help from East Washington. You'll be on your own for a bit, so be prepared. Now, right stuff is right. Western Washington is not going to get a hint or even a break, because it's very possible that there may be a new eruption under the ground, just not with the volcanoes. Yes, the volcanoes are showing signs of eruption. They're showing signs of pre-eruption. But the gases, the magma rising towards the surface in areas they've never seen before, is very much a concern. But it's not just Western Washington either. Eastern Washington is also facing these same anomalies. There is basaltic lava all along the surface of the Columbia River. There's a reason. It wasn't just Mount Rainier that erupted. It was not just Mount Rainier that erupted. There are volcanoes all over the place. There may not be craters exactly in other areas. We've been talking about this for a very long time over the years. Why do we say that? Because we've seen the lava fields. We've seen the lava fields all over eastern Washington, as well as western. What happened? During the glacier period, the glaciers came down, and as they came down, they took off the mountains. They took off the craters that were once there. Not all of them, but some of them. They reduced the mountains, the streams, the rivers to nothing. They ground down the bedrock to the basic basaltic areas that you see now. So we are going to see volcanic eruptions in various places you may not have already seen. Base says they canceled their trips to Washington after multiple dreams and a vision. Be safe. Aubrey's still going there. Aubrey's a very dear sister to me. She's headed to Washington herself to visit her son and family. We're praying for all of you. We are praying for all of you. Guys, you need to be very careful. That's why we're talking again about this. We've talked about this for weeks. Previously, we talked specifically about the Pacific Northwest volcanoes. We've talked about the Cascadia earthquakes as well. This is going to happen. This is going to happen. Ann Pickering says the scientists think that all the volcanoes are connected. Not all of them, but a majority there on the West Coast. Connected. They've even been talking about the Cascade volcanoes being connected to Yellowstone. Yes, there is a link. Aubrey's saying, thank you, Ron, I don't want to go. I know what you're saying. Aubrey, I think right now you're probably going to be fine. But I don't give it much more than 2 years. And we're going to have a mega thrust earthquake. And yes, we're also going to have volcanic eruptions of the volcanoes. And volcanic eruptions in places we haven't seen the volcanoes in quite some time. Not in our lifetime. It's going to happen, guys. Vigorous Wolf says, watch the activity of the sun. I agree too. We just got hit by a geomagnetic storm. Unreal. A class 2 geomagnetic storm. Because of huge plasma eruption of the sun. Now we have a huge sunspot Earth facing. That sunspot has erupted before, causing even up to an X9 class solar flare. It could happen again. We've heard about that before. Beneath this video today, in the program description, we have links for the government links. We also have links to other programs, including Wages World. Wages World on YouTube talks about sunspots and solar flares. Mark Wages, who is a friend of mine, a very, very good friend of mine, has a lot of good information, excellent information. Mark Wages is an expert. Go to his channel, show his channel some love. Show his channel some love. Watch his programs, his recent programs especially. You're going to want to know that information. Now, we are expecting another storm here on the East Coast. Right now, there is no huge thunderstorm warning, but we have black clouds moving in again. Very dark clouds moving in again as I'm monitoring right outside my office. I ask all of you here on the East Coast to be aware of the weather. possibly even violent weather. Yes, there are some thunderstorms moving in. There are some thunderstorms moving in. Most of the thunderstorm activity has gone to our north. However, those storms may magnify themselves. They may grow. With those thunderstorms come tornadoes as well. Be very mindful of what's going on. Yes, right now, coming during this weekend and into the first part of next week, there's a cool down expected. We've had 95 to 101 degree temperatures during the last couple days. 101 degree temperatures yesterday. Today, 95. Still is going to be hot through at least tomorrow. But then I believe we're going to have a cool down. But guys, it's not going to be that way all over the U.S. You guys are going to see storms. You're going to see tornadoes. Be very well aware of where you're at. Watch the weather. Listen to your radios. Make sure you have an AM, FM weather radio like I showed you last night. If you have television service, make sure you monitor your local television stations. Not HGTV. Yes, I love HGTV. Yes, I love music. I love other channels, but they are not going to give you the latest up-to-date weather information. If you're under a watch or even a warning, make sure you're tuned to your local weather, where they can give you the latest information, what's going on. It's just not that. Just not that. Come July 4th, we are still expecting a major event to happen. We're still expecting a major event to happen, July 4th. The Democrat Communist Party here in America is having an anti-Trump protest again. An anti-Trump protest again on July 4th. I am going to continue to warn about this. Please watch where you're at. Please watch yourselves where you're at. Be aware of where you're at. Be aware of your surroundings. If there becomes a riot or a protest, back away. Get completely away. The President of the United States has permission from the courts. He doesn't have to have permission from the governors. He has permission from the courts and the military to exercise the military and put them in the cities and towns to help protect each one of us. He's going to do it. These protests may be violent. Please know how you can protect yourselves. Stay out of it. Stay out of it. Okay? I will give you more updates when I see the updates coming in, but I expect it to happen very soon. Okay? Does anybody have any questions about anything we talked about tonight? Yes, do not be in the wrong place at the right time. Richard Smith says, if I could go there and support Trump to their faces, I would. I would too. But then again, I've been trained. I was a cop for some 24 years. I've not lost anything after my years of service. I've actually gained information. I'm very well trained. Rebecca the Explorer is here in the chat. Thank you, Rebecca, for being here. She reported a 1.8 tremor over in Iran, Iraq area. The right stuff says negative, Ghost Rider. The pattern is full. The pattern is full. Guys, if you don't, here's another question from Aubrey coming in. She says, how deep are the magma plumes under Seattle? No more than 6 to 8 kilometers deep. no more than 6 to 8 kilometers deep. Not very deep at all, very shallow. We talked about that early on this broadcast. Very shallow magma plumes here. Vegas Wolf says someone from Japan predicted something big on the 5th. I think something big could happen between now and the 5th. I've been watching all the seismic data and the satellite data and the solar data coming in. I fully expect something to happen in Japan sometime between now and the 5th. We've already seen a huge rise in swarms of earthquakes south of southern Japan. Huge swarm of earthquakes down there. And it's continuing to some extent. But I think over on the western shores of Japan, or even the Western Pacific, we're going to see some big earthquakes, I think. Rebecca says, Ron, you talk about a 4.5 or 4.4 of Oregon. No, I did not talk about it. Let's go over the USGS map for just a minute. Let's take down our webcam. Let's go over here to the USGS map. Let's take a look at it. Down here in the southern Cascadia region, over here on the northern San Andreas Fault, we have a 2.4 minor earthquake. Further west here on this fault, a 2.9 earthquake, 2.9, 3.0 earthquake out here. But over here on the Blanco fracture zone, we have a 4.4 moderate earthquake here. A 4.4 moderate earthquake, 297 kilometers west northwest of Bandon, Oregon. West northwest of Bandon, Oregon here. A 4.4 magnitude earthquake on the Blanco fracture zone. Okay, I backed this out so you can see the different subduction zones. The subduction zone of the Cascadia subduction zone here stretches from up here just south of Haida Gwaii, Queen Charlotte Island, all the way down to Northern California down here. Okay, that's the Cascadia subduction zone. Then we have the Juan de Fuca Fault, Juandefuca, Juan de Fuca Fault. It's that zigzag fault here. The zigzag fault comes into contact with the northwestern side of the Blanco fracture zone. The Blanco fracture zone reaches down here to the Gorda Ridge. This perpendicular earthquake fault, short earthquake fault, that runs from the northeast to the southwest here. It touches the Gorda Escarpment here. The east-west earthquake fault, the Gorda Escarpment. Then it goes over to the Cascadia subduction zone and touches the San Andreas Fault at the Triple Junction. This, in totality, is the Cascadia subduction zone region. The Cascadia subduction zone region. Any questions? We even have an earthquake up here off the coast of Washington State, right here. This is a 2.1 minor earthquake here, right here by the coast of Santiago, Washington. 5 kilometers east-northeast of Santiago, Washington. Okay? Yes, today they're finally showing some seismic activity at Mount Rainier. This is a joke. This is a complete joke. Earlier I showed you seismic activity at Mount Rainier. They're not showing it. They're not showing everything. They only show what they want us to see, which is basically nothing. Right here at the summit of Mount Rainier, this is a 0.3 microquake. Not at the summit, but 2 miles beneath it. Actually, 1 mile beneath the summit here. Not 2, 1 mile beneath the summit. The 0.3 microquake, but there are dozens of microquakes There's dozens of minor earthquakes. There's at least one 3.0 earthquake here at Mount Rainier today. They're not going to show it, are they? West of Mount Rainier, we have this earthquake right here. Let me show you. This is a 0.5 microquake accompanied by another quake here. This is a 0.6 west of Mount Rainier. Southwest of Mount Rainier, we have another earthquake here, a 0.1 microquake. They're not even willing to show you exactly what's going on, only what they want us to see. This is normally what USGS does. They lie, they lie, they lie. That's what they do best. We have a new earthquake here at Mount St. Helens. This is a minus 0.2 microquake here. This is over on the upper ridge of Mount St. Helens, northwest ridge of Mount St. Helens. This is, they say, a minus 0.2. This is 2 miles deep, 4.7 kilometers deep. But again, it's not the only microquake, minor tremor, minor earthquake here. By their own admissions, they are lying. Their omissions say they're lying. I can pull up seismic data showing they're lying. If they don't talk about it, they're lying. Plain and simple. They don't want us to know anything. Any questions? Any questions at all? Again, my main purpose here tonight is to give you identity to understand what's going on around us. That's all our whole purpose here at EMA. To make sure you have the information you need to make decisions, to help yourselves, and to help those you care about. That's what we do best. That's exactly what we do best, guys. Try to make sure you have the information you need. Now, I want to share with you a scripture here. One of my favorites. One of my favorites. I typically try to share something spiritual because what we usually talk about here is not necessarily spiritual. It can sometimes be scary. I don't want to scare anybody, like I said, but I do want to give you the information you need to make decisions to save your lives. Okay? Rebecca's saying a 2.8 earthquake in northern Chile in the Antofagasta region. Not surprising. Not surprising at all. One of my favorite scriptures here is in the New Testament, in the book of Romans, chapter 1, verse 16. I am not ashamed of the gospel of Christ, for it is the power of God unto salvation to everyone that believeth, to the Jew first and also to the Greek. When the Apostle Paul put this here, he was talking to everyone, but he's also talking to each one of us. Let's not be ashamed of the gospel of Jesus Christ. We can read the scriptures and we can see what's going on in our own day. Even Isaiah talked about our day. The apostles help prepare us for what's going to come. I ask each one of you to gain your own testimony of Jesus Christ. Don't be ashamed of Jesus Christ. Be happy. Set Jesus Christ as an example for you to follow. Follow his commandments. Follow his commandments. Jesus Christ is King. Jesus is our Savior, our Lord and King. I love him. I love him. James says, make sure you drink lots of water. I am. I am. I've got a glass here full of ice. I've been sipping on ice water and water all day long. Brothers and sisters, find the scriptures. Find yourself a set of scriptures. If not, read your scriptures online. They're there. Follow the scriptures. Follow the example that Jesus Christ set for each one of us. Obey the commandments. Follow Christ strictly. Our scriptures prepare us for what's going to happen. If we follow Jesus Christ, we'll be blessed. He's promised us one thing: eternal life in his Heavenly Father's kingdom. His Father's kingdom, and our Heavenly Father as well. Let's follow him. Let's follow Heavenly Father. I look forward to seeing each one of you in Heavenly Father's kingdom in the weeks, months, and days to come. May God bless you. May God be with you this day and always. The right stuff says John 3:16. I agree. I love John 3:16 as well. I love the scriptures. I have so many favorites you wouldn't even know it. I talk about it quite frequently. Anyway, guys, I hope that you will have and follow the things we talked about. If you have friends in the Pacific Northwest area, warn them. Ask them to watch this program tonight. It's full of all the right information that they need. Please prepare. If anything else happens tonight, we'll be back on the air to tell you about it as soon as the information becomes available. The same thing goes for the morning. Tomorrow afternoon after 4 o'clock, we will be back on the air to talk about emergencies, disasters, and emergency preparedness. Friday is Preparedness Friday. Please come here with questions and ideas how you're going to prepare for emergencies. We talk about every kind of disaster and emergency that you might think of. Fridays are Preparedness Fridays. Send me ideas what you want me to talk about to our email, rltnspdema@gmail.com. Again, you can help support us on our channel by going to our PayPal, 2 PayPal locations, and our Venmo location as well. You can also send us a letter or card with a donation put inside your letter or your card, and send them to our address, 504 Bethel Road, Box 401, Morganton, North Carolina. The zip code here is 28655. Have a good night, guys. Please know that we love you. Carol and I love you very much. God be with you. May God bless you. God be with you until we see you again. Well, have a good night, guys. We love you very much.